Greetings, everybody. My name is Mike Lyons, and this is the Seasoned Advice HR podcast. And today's topic is HR basics for small employers. I am a 20-year veteran of the human resources field. I've worked in the restaurant industry and the healthcare industry, most notably. And my passion is helping small to medium businesses get the most out of their people. You've got to have employees. You might as well have them with the least risk possible and get the best results possible. And that is easy to say and hard to do. There are a lot of things involved with that, especially as you get bigger. But today's talk is going to be focused on small businesses. So let's say maybe 20 employees or fewer. And I'm going to talk about the things that you need to be thinking about if you're in that category from an HR standpoint. Now, HR is a lot of different things, and it might mean different things to different people. But for the purposes of this talk and for purposes of what I do, it has to do with compliance. It has to do with reducing your risk, but it also has to do with having effective employees and being an effective manager and an effective leader and being the kind of business that people want to work for and stay working for, maybe more importantly. And so it encompasses a lot of different things. This is not just about paperwork and staying compliant. There's much more to it than that. So I'm going to talk about all of that in this talk here today, which is HR basics for small employers. So let's start it off. What's first? It's a compliance topic, and it has to do with just new hire paperwork, the I-9 and the W-4, a couple of super basic forms that every employee needs to be doing. These are things, the I-9 verifies that an employee is legal to work in the United States. You need to do your due diligence to make sure that every employee you bring on is able to work in the United States and has whatever appropriate visas or representations that allows them to do that. And the I-9 is the form on which you do that. Some employers use E-Verify, which is a more diligent and maybe accurate or I don't know, type A type of way of verifying employment. Some states require you to use E-Verify. You can verify employment on someone remotely using E-Verify. If you have remote employees, you have to use E-Verify to validate their work authorization. And there's a procedure for that. But E-Verify is a good tool. It just helps you to ensure that the people you're hiring are legal to work in the US. The last thing you want is the federal government closing your office down because everyone that works for you is not authorized to work in the United States. That's especially concerning or possible these days with the current, federal administration that's in place. So do your homework, make sure that employees are authorized to work in the US. The W-4 is a tax form every employee should be filling out so that you can do proper tax deductions. So those are a couple basic things that you definitely need to be doing. Next thing you need to be thinking about, and this is a big one, is you need to know the HR laws that apply to your business. Certain laws are applicable once you hit a certain employee size. Some laws are applicable just in your state. Some laws are specific to your city. There are cities in America that have sick leave laws, for example. Even though those laws may not apply in the state that city is in, the city may have sick leave laws or other laws or statutes within that city. States have their own leave laws or sick leave laws or discrimination laws that can differ from those at the federal level. So you need to be aware of that. Break laws can differ at the city or state level. So understand your local laws and understand the federal laws. If you're a small employer, there's a number of laws that apply to you. And even if they don't apply to you, for example, let's say that, if we're talking about federal discrimination law, some of those laws don't apply to smaller employers, but once you hit, I believe, 15 employees, some of those laws begin to affect you. And you don't want to be saying, oh, we only have 13 employees, so we can just do whatever we want. No, I think it's best practice to abide by the laws that are prevailing in the country, even if you may not be strictly bound to them. And the reason is it's going to make you a better employer. It's going to make you a better leader and manager. Now, would I advise you to follow the letter of the law if it doesn't apply to you? I think that's a situation you can do on a case by case basis. But just because you're a small employer, don't take carte blanche to discriminate against people with disabilities and discriminate in hiring and pay decisions just because you're not covered by that particular law. It's best practice to behave as if you were. Hire people without regard to race, religion, age, national origin, sexual orientation. Accommodate disabilities if you can. You may not be beholden to the Americans with Disabilities Act if you have 5 employees, but my advice is to understand that law is out there, and that complying with that law or complying with the spirit of the law is going to make you a better employer, and it's going to make you open to more employees working for you. Um, so I would suggest that if you have questions about that, consult with an HR specialist who can help you understand where the line is. But absolutely, you want to be an ethical leader. You want to um, lead in a way that would be compliant with the law if it was applicable to you. So that's something to be aware of. And there certainly are laws that apply to you with 1 employee and above. One of those being the Fair Labor Standards Act. And this is the law that requires employees to be paid for their time. It requires you to pay overtime to employees who are eligible. It dictates who is and who isn't eligible for overtime. It talks about when employees should be paid for travel time or being on call. And this law is the source of many federal fines and back pay judgments against employers. Employers like you, small employers that made a mistake and said that someone should be exempt from overtime, meaning they don't get overtime, but really they should be getting overtime. And this is where an HR consultant or an HR advisor can help you properly classify jobs as either exempt or non-exempt. But you do not want to be shortchanging people on their wages or on their overtime, because that can be, first of all, it's a bad look. It's a bad look. You're not going to be treating your employees well. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to want to stick around, and it puts you at legal risk. Why would you do that? So get some advice. It can be. This is something that can be looked at fairly easily. Another law that you need to be aware of is the laws that affect who can be considered a contractor versus an employee. If you treat employees differently based on being either a contractor or an employee in terms of benefits or any kind of goodies, then it's very important that you correctly classify who's a contractor and who is not. And there are a number of federally identified ways of distinguishing contractors from employees, and you don't want to misclassify. You don't want to be having some people are contractors, some people are employees, and they basically do the same thing. If they basically do the same thing in the same way, are subject to the same supervision, the same expectations, the same work hours, and some are contractors and some are employees, then you are at risk, especially if the employees are getting goodies and benefits that the contractors aren't getting. And one of those goodies and benefits could simply be that you pay for part of the payroll tax. It is definitely a claim that has happened from contractors that have said, you know what, I should have been, or you should have been paying my payroll taxes for me. You misclassified me as a contractor, and that could be the basis of a claim. And you may have to pay a fine and back wages or back payroll taxes as a result of an unfavorable judgment against you on that matter. So you don't want to play too loose with that. Um, Another law that varies state to state has to do with kind of postings and posters that you have to put up. And these are just notices that states and at the federal level, they require you to put up for all employees. You need to be able to show that these are posted in a conspicuous place or shared with every new hire so that you can affirmatively claim that you have shared this, right? So, there may be a workers' comp notice, or there may be a workers' rights notice, and some of these are at the city level as well, city, state, county level. Different posters can be required, and so educate yourself. The thing I would recommend on this is there's many companies out there where you can buy a poster, and that poster can be tailored to your city, state, and it will have all the things that are needed. Um, it's pretty rare for at the city level to be a poster, but every state is very different, and so you can get a state-specific poster on any number of websites. It's even Amazon has some of these posters for sale. So get those posters and just know the law. Know the law in general. I don't have enough time to go through all the different laws that could affect a small employer, but just be aware. Next thing you need to be aware of is you want to make sure that you're doing your payroll correctly. Reporting requirements with payroll. For example, in Texas, you have to report whenever you have a new hire. And this helps to ensure that anyone that owes child support is found by the state of Texas. And I'm guessing that that's a requirement in most states. So there's reporting requirements. Then you have requirements to pay state taxes, unemployment taxes. You definitely want to register in your state with the Unemployment Commission, so that if an employee loses their job at no fault of their own and they make an unemployment claim, the state needs to be able to know who to track down. They need to speak with you and adjust your taxes or charge you back for any unemployment claims that are judged unfavorably for you as an employer. And so make sure you register properly within any state that you operate in, from a payroll perspective. And a good payroll company and a good payroll consultant will be able to help you do that. And they will make sure that they do all the filings every quarter to the federal government and the state government on what wages were paid, who were they paid to, for purposes of unemployment and state taxes, and sometimes workers' compensation as well. Also, as it relates to payroll, make sure that you're tracking employees' time properly, that you have some documented method for employees to report the hours that they worked and to certify the hours that they worked so that you can pay them properly. Not paying people properly for the hours that they worked is something that will get you into a lot of trouble, to put it mildly. It'll get you in trouble with the federal government. It'll get you in trouble with the employee. You don't want to become known as an employer who doesn't keep track of the hours and pay people properly. That is maybe one of the fastest ways to get a terrible reputation. So make sure you track time properly. And a lot of payroll companies will provide a system that allows employees to track their time. There's HR software out there that will do this for you as well. And part of what I can do as a consultant or other HR consultants can help advise you on systems that you could utilize, and they can help them set those up for you so that you can focus on whatever it is that you do best. Maybe you're a doctor and you own a medical practice. Maybe you have an electrician company. You want to be out there marketing and growing your business and providing service. And some of these things are best delegated to experts. Um, so that's a resource that you can call upon. All right. So what's next? What else should small businesses be paying attention to? You should have an employee handbook. You should have an employee handbook that addresses a number of things. First off, you want to talk about the nature of the relationship. That if you're in an at will state, which most are, that this employment relationship is at will. There's no contract in place. You want to outline the expectations, the high level expectations, right? So, um, talk about things that are expected of the employee. Maybe it's, honesty, integrity, um, how we treat customers. What are things that could result in disciplinary action or termination? You want to outline some of those things. You want to outline how conflicts should be resolved. You want to outline how grievances or issues can be worked out, how harassment complaints and concerns should be addressed. You should have a statement in your handbook that explicitly expresses how you feel about harassment and discrimination, and that you do not tolerate it in the business. And part of this is that way the employee later, if they have a dispute with you, if there's a conflict, you can say, look, we made it very clear that we have a policy about how we handle harassment, how we handle discrimination, and that we're against it, and that we have a certain method for resolving those conflicts. That's an important thing to include. So the handbook should be complete, but not extremely long. I saw one the other day that was 80 pages. That's too long, in my opinion. You don't need an 80-page handbook. You could get by with a 30-page handbook that is very succinct and addresses the most important things. No one's going to read an 80-page handbook. It might be a good CYA, but it's going to read more like a contract, and no one's really going to want to take the time to look at that. So I would recommend a shorter handbook that people actually will read, and that you can actually walk new hires through the handbook and say, hey, this is why this is here. This is what this means. This is, something that's important to us. This is what can get you in trouble. Communicate that and make it short and understandable, and have employees sign that handbook upon new hire. If they don't want to sign it, then that means they don't want to work for you. And that's just how it works. These are kind of the terms that we operate under as an employer, and that's what the handbook is all about. It's there to protect you, and it's there to outline some of the basic expectations. It helps you because you can always point to it. Hey, Sally, when we were going through onboarding, we talked about how you need to give 2 hours notice if you're going to call in, and things like that are helpful to include. And an HR person or a consultant can help put together a handbook for you. um, everyone that has one employee should have a handbook. Job descriptions are important. Job descriptions help you recruit. They help people understand what their role is. They help people understand what the objectives of the job are. And yet, in a small business, people wear a lot of hats for sure, but it's helpful to have a clear title and clear areas of responsibility. And this, in a small business, this can act as just a starting point for the role, but at least it gives you a starting point. There are definitely businesses where people lack clarity on their role. What is my job? Where does my job end and someone else's, you know, begins? And so job descriptions can help with that. Descriptions can help you when it's time to recruit, when it's time to hire. You've got something right there that you can post to find new employees. So it's important to have job descriptions for all the positions in your organization. Um, and the job descriptions outline things like what are the physical requirements, right? And so if you're hiring for a job that has physical demands, you're going to want to put the accurate physical demands of that job on there, because if someone applies and says that they can do the physical demands and then later on it's found that they can't, you want to make sure that that job description had those mentioned in there. So we've disclosed, yeah, well, you're going to be on your feet 8 hours a day, or this is a job that requires lifting. I wouldn't put things in there that aren't truly required, but this is your opportunity to do that. Job descriptions are really important. If you have questions, everybody watching and listening, if you have questions and you're watching on the live broadcast of this talk, feel free to drop that into the LinkedIn Live comments section, and I'll do my best to answer those. Would love to interact with you on this presentation. And if you're listening to this on a recorded podcast, shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to answer questions through email, and or even jump on a Zoom chat with you if you have HR questions. Um, Employees are so key to your business, even for a small business, and finding good employees is really important. And so having a process for hiring employees, having a job description, having some kind of tracking process for applicants. A lot of software that helps you run payroll will also have an applicant tracking software. And there are also standalone applicant tracking softwares available that will help you stay organized with job applicants, that will help you communicate with job applicants. Um, you can text applicants, email applicants directly from that software. And really, it just helps you stay organized. It helps you stay organized. I'm a big fan of a platform called Breezy HR as a standalone applicant tracking system. If that's something that's not part of another software that you've got, Breezy HR is really easy to use and it has a lot of great features in it, and it's pretty affordable. So that's something that you may want to check out. But there are other platforms, Paycom, Paycor, or other HR softwares that you can partner with that include applicant tracking systems, and you want to leverage those. Set them up so that they work for you, and make sure you understand how they work, because bringing people into your company is the most critical time. If you bring the wrong person in, it is going to hurt your culture, it's going to hurt your team, it's going to hurt your day-to-day performance. If you bring the right people in, it's going to benefit you. And so having a good process for hiring good people is vital. And the applicant tracking process, if you're using a spreadsheet or some software and it doesn't work for you, it's going to slow you down. People are going to fall through the cracks. The good people are going to fall through the cracks, and the not so good employees are going to still be there. And so you're going to be stuck with not so great employees if you can't move swiftly and if you can't identify the best people. And so I like to have a good applicant tracking system, one that I like to use. I don't like to use those ones that are clunky and frustrating. So be prepared now. Be prepared now so that when it's time to hire, you've got a tool. You've got a tool. Some states require you to have paid sick leave or PTO. But even if they don't, having some sort of a paid PTO um, policy and way of tracking that is going to give you an advantage. Even if you're a small employer, employees expect to have paid time off. They expect to have paid time off. And if you don't offer paid time off, that is going to limit the quality of the people you're going to hire. If you don't have it, you're going to quite frankly, miss out on some of the better hires. And so have some way to pay people for time off, paid holidays. And again, these can be tracked in a lot of these payroll and time tracking softwares. You can preload it with how you want to handle PTO. Maybe you want to have them accrue 1 day a month. Maybe you want to have them accrue so many PTO hours for for per hour that they work. Those are both common methods. But you need a system that accrues that PTO and tracks it. And then when the employee needs to take PTO, they put it in the system. And there's a way to request it and a way for you to approve it or not approve it. I really think that is a fairly easy recruiting tool and employee retention tool, is to have some kind of a PTO policy. And you can put that into your handbook or have it as a standalone policy that you communicate to your employees. Another thing that a small business should be thinking about is, how can I stay in touch with my staff morale and the engagement of my staff? I am a fan of anonymous surveys that employees can fill out to talk about their employee experience. Why do I like this? Because people tend to be more honest when things are anonymous, and it allows them a forum to share concerns. Sometimes you have to take anonymous comments with a grain of salt, but at least it gives you a starting point with any potential concerns that may come up. And so, an annual survey is a great tool. Some things you might want to put into an annual staff survey might be, um, you know, how do you feel about your work schedule? Or how do you feel like your work life balance is working here in this business? Or are you satisfied with the benefits that we're offering right now? Even if you don't offer benefits, this can be a way to find out if there's a major concern with the fact that you're not offering benefits at the moment. If you have managers in your organization that are potentially causing turnover because of their poor leadership, this can be a way of finding out. This can be a way of finding out because employees sometimes are hesitant to speak up to the business owner or the CEO, because it's a small business and word gets around. And so having a way for employees to report concerns like that. Another alternative to this idea is to have some anonymous reporting tool that employees can go to a link and file an anonymous complaint. And you may say, "Oh man, I don't want that. Like, I'm going to get complaints all the time." You really won't. You absolutely won't. I've worked in businesses with 200 employees and more, and people rarely utilize this kind of a tool. But you need to have it, because if there's a problem, you want to know about it before that person goes to the state or the federal government to say, my manager's harassing me, or, I'm not getting paid the wages I'm supposed to get paid. Um, you want to have a way for employees to anonymously report things so that you can deal with it internally the right way and not have it get out of your hands. It can be something as simple as like a Google form, or there are services out there that will do this for you, which is nice because it's nice to have a third party handling these sort of quote unquote whistleblower complaints. And these third parties will, they have a hotline or a website, and they anonymize everything and they get the details, and they send, anytime one comes in, they let you know that you get an email, hey, someone called the hotline. And then you can see the notes that were taken, and then you can move on from there about how do you want to address it. But I absolutely have seen that help a business, and they don't cost a lot. Those services don't cost a lot. They cost, $100 or $200 a year. It's a lot of times they're just based on how many employees you have. So if you're a small employer, they're not very expensive. Um, Next thing small businesses should be thinking about is having a process for onboarding new employees. A problem that a lot of small employers have is they throw people into the job. They just throw, hey, you're signing this handbook, and now we're going. And that is a very disorienting experience for a new hire. And so because it's very hard changing jobs, you've got to get to know a new building, you've got to get to know a whole new set of people, you've got this new manager, this new company, and all the expectations that come with that. Maybe the company has a very different culture, and I can tell you from experience, going from company A to company B can involve many, many adjustment points for an employee, and many more than what you think, because you've been working in this business for years, maybe, and you understand it. Maybe you've forgotten what it's like to work at a different business. But when you hire someone, that person just came from a different business. The rules were different. Maybe it was a bigger company. Maybe the way that employees engaged with each other was different. Maybe they were really sarcastic and informal. And in your business, you're much more buttoned up and um, meticulous in how you communicate. Maybe we don't do sarcasm here. Maybe we're very formal. And so there are so many things to teach new hires. And so you could spend days going through that process. You don't have to spend days, but you should at least put some thought into how you want to onboard your staff. What are the things you need to tell them? What are the service expectations? What are the things that you do in your business? Right. And so, what do I mean by that? So, maybe this person is coming from a law firm where they were a receptionist, and you're hiring them to be a receptionist in healthcare. Well, they understand what law firms do, but they may not understand what a dentist office offers, or what an orthopedic surgery office offers. So teach them. These are some of the conditions we treat. These are some of the treatments that we provide. Um, these are some of the ways that we make money. We make money by upselling, cosmetic work. We make money by, you know, selling this or that procedure. Um, these are the things that may matter to our business. Workflow matters. Or what? Maybe here we really want the doctor to have a good relationship with the patient, and so we're okay if doctor goes overtime with a patient, and the schedule kind of flexes a little bit, right? So some businesses are very buttoned up and regimented, and some businesses it's expected to be more fluid and customer focused. And so that's an example of a mindset shift that an employee will have to make. And if you don't educate them about what that change might be, they may come in and think, "Oh, I need to be black and white, and the patient's taking too long, and I need to knock on the door and find out why is it taking so long." And that might cause that person to be maybe more rude with a patient or more abrupt. And they're just trying to do their job the way they think it's supposed to be done. They're just trying to get the patient through the clinic, for example. I work with a lot of healthcare, and so I use a lot of healthcare examples. But that's an example of how an employee could just be doing what they think is right. They're not trying to be mean, but they came from an environment that was very regimented, and that's how they look at the world. You have to teach them how you do things in your business. Teach them about your culture. Teach them about what matters to you. Teach them about the conditions that you treat. Maybe if you're a plumbing office, teach them about the typical plumbing problems that people call in for. If someone calls in with a toilet that won't flush, these are the typical things we do. Give them some sort of FAQs and a roadmap of how to handle certain situations. Even if they aren't taking incoming calls, or even if they're not a technician, educate them about your business so they understand. Maybe they're an accountant, maybe they're a bookkeeper, maybe they shoot, maybe they just clean the office. Teach them about your business so they understand how to do their job. You know what? These papers over here are not trash. This is what they are. This is what they're there for. This is what this room is all about. This is why it has to be clean. Um, you know, this is how we keep this room organized, right? So there are things that someone who's cleaning an office will need to know um, as part of being a part of your business. And so give people context, give people the background, the backdrop of what am I doing here? You know, Bringing an employee into your company is like plucking them out. It's like, think about plucking an alien off of Jupiter and planting them into, you know, Austin, Texas. They're like a fish out of water. That is what it's like to take an employee from one job where they were before into your job. Even if it's the same industry, one healthcare to another or one lawyer's office to another, there are many, many changes that person has to adapt to. So help them adapt to that. Help them adapt to that. And as you're going through onboarding, there's training that you have to do, more compliance related training. So in healthcare, HIPAA training, patient privacy training is important. Um, Electronic system security training is really important in a lot of industries, especially healthcare, because privacy can be compromised, patient data can be compromised, and these are things that every employer needs to know about. Sexual harassment training and anti-discrimination training are things I would recommend that you include. These are things that also can be included in some of the software that you're using for HR management as well. If you're a healthcare employer, you need to offer hepatitis B vaccinations to your new hires if bloodborne exposure is a risk in your business. That's something that you have to track that you've offered the vaccine to folks and they've either accepted or denied that. And if they accept it, that we've gone through and completed the vaccination process. So that's an example in the healthcare world. So make sure that you are onboarding with an eye towards integrating the person and making sure that you do all the compliance things that need to be done that minimize your risk, right? No one, unless you're maybe in California, it's not required to do harassment training, but it definitely reduces your risk. It definitely reduces your risk. And so it's recommended. It's recommended. And it can help you in the event of a dispute later on. If employees harass each other, you can say as an employer, look, I trained both of these knuckleheads on harassment, and yet it still happened. And so the training can help to defend you, and it can just help reduce the incidence of problems. That can help employees know where to go and who to talk to if there is a problem. So that's an important thing to do. Next thing to think about for a small business when it comes to HR is understand what you stand for. And I could have maybe started with this one, but some people call this core values, some people call this vision or mission. But understand, what do you stand for? What are your values? What really matters? Now, I'm not talking about integrity and hard work and excellence and all that. I want you to be more specific than that. Have an idea of what do you mean. Maybe have an example of how you treat a patient or a customer. What makes your law firm or your electrician shop or cabinet manufacturing facility, what makes you different from your competitors? Is it service? Is it price? Those could be values that you want to talk about with your employees so they understand, hey, this is what's important here, and this does a few different things. It helps people understand what the expectations are. It helps them to understand what's valued here. So like, if this is a company that values cost containment and price, then ideas that help reduce cost or lower costs for the customer are going to be more valued than maybe other suggestions. When you know your values, then it makes it easier to recognize employees for the great things that they do. And you're going to want to recognize them for things that align with your values. And so if the Ritz-Carlton goes above and beyond for its customers, if you want to be the Ritz-Carlton of ophthalmology offices, then that means going above and beyond for your patients. And so maybe something happened in your office last week and you want to recognize that and it aligns with that service value. Um, so understanding your values can help you to identify areas to recognize employees. um, Communication. This is my next topic that you need to be thinking about if you're a small, medium, or large employer as it relates to HR. Communication. This is maybe this is a big one. This is a big one because people hate it when you don't communicate. I know a business that went through a change of payroll process, payroll timing, and they didn't communicate that with the employees. That's frustrating because it resulted in a disjointed paycheck process that left people wondering why they're getting a partial paycheck. Well, it's something that we could have easily communicated ahead of time. So be transparent, be proactive with communication. Whenever you're making a key decision, think, who do I need to tell? Who do I need to cascade this information to? And a lot of times your employees need to know if it's a change in how they're paid, if it's a change in holidays, if it's change in work schedule for the office, if it is a new business line that you want to open up. Something as simple as hiring a new employee without communication can throw a lot of problems into your business. For example, excuse me, let's say that you hire a salesperson or a marketing person, but you do no communication around this new hire. Well, if you had a person helping you with sales and marketing, maybe that was kind of like part of their job previously, and now you're hiring a full timer. Well, that person's going to be wondering, well, what's going to happen with my job? Am I still going to be doing that? Am I still going to help out with that? I really was liking it. I didn't know you were hiring a full time person. And so, what does that mean for me? Does that mean you don't value me? What does that mean? And so, bringing on a new employee in a new function can cause people to wonder, especially if it overlaps with things that they do. And believe me, people tend to just assume the worst. You could go out and make a hire, and you could cause multiple people to wonder if their jobs are at risk because you've just hired somebody in a particular role. Some people, they may be fearful about new software. Let's say you've decided to purchase a new software tool in your business. That could immediately make multiple people in your business wonder, well, am I going to still have a job tomorrow? They've put this check-in kiosk, at the front desk of my healthcare clinic that I work at, and I'm wondering if that's going to take my job. And that is a valid concern that you need to be getting ahead of. You need to be proactively communicating about that. Why are we doing this? How is it going to help us? Is it going to change your job? Is it going to eliminate your job? Is it going to make your job more fun and exciting? What is it going to do? And so communication is really key because people hate to not know things. They hate to not know, and they fill in the gaps of not knowing. They fill it with negative thoughts. They assume, oh, my job's going away, or I'm going to get a pay cut, or this company is shutting down. You would be surprised at how often employees draw conclusions like that, catastrophic conclusions, based on things that to you as a business owner seem mundane. Maybe you took a meeting with a software vendor, or maybe you had a conversation with an attorney or an investor or something. Something that could be meaningless, or maybe it's something that's about growing the business. But if employees don't understand what you're doing, they're going to assume the worst if you don't communicate. If you don't communicate. And so my advice is be transparent, as transparent as you can. Yeah, if you are planning on closing the business and laying everyone off, maybe transparency isn't the best thing. Um, but it also could be. It could be valuable to be transparent with people about that. And so that's a case by case situation. Generally, transparency is good. It tends to calm people down. And so, but most small businesses struggle with that because they don't think ahead. They don't think proactively. Another thing small businesses should be thinking about with HR is how they select managers. As you grow, you're going to have to start delegating management. And you want to make sure that you pick people who have emotional intelligence, who are good at delegating, who are good at communicating, who are good at giving feedback and praise, and who can identify when the team vibe is off or when there's social dynamics at play, because that's what a manager's job is. The manager's job isn't to be the best electrician in the company. The manager's job is to help the other electricians be good at what they do. And so that's a different skill set than being a good electrician or being a great um, software developer. That's a management skill set. And so make sure you pick leaders carefully. And when you pick them, you want to train them on a lot of the things that I'm talking about: labor law, leadership, communication. Um, Make sure they understand what's in the handbook, right? And so that's a whole separate orientation and preparation process for managers in your business. That you can get help with that from someone like me to help prepare a manager to be more effective or give them coaching. But do something to educate them and prepare them. And then my last piece of advice here for small businesses as it relates to HR is have a person that you can call for advice on HR, even if you don't need it today. You might not need it today or next month, but develop a relationship with a HR service provider so that when you have a problem, you already know someone to call. You've already kind of pre-vetted them. You understand who they are and what they're all about. You understand their expertise. And then when there's a problem, you can call them. They can come do an investigation. They can help you audit your processes, make sure that you're doing things the right way. They can help to upgrade the systems that you're using for payroll and employee data tracking. And that's what an HR service provider can help you with. And so find someone that understands your industry and understands the way you operate your business and is simpatico with your outlook and the things you're trying to accomplish. That those are my tips for small business HR. Um, this is kind of just scratching the surface, but I would say these are the essential things to think about. If you have questions, reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. That's where you can find me. You can also find me on Instagram at Seasoned Advice. My name is Mike Lyons. I am the chief consultant with Seasoned Advice, where we help small and medium businesses get better results through people while minimizing their risk. And it allows them to focus on what they do best and grow their revenue. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Seasoned Advice HR Cast. We'll see you next time, where I will be bringing you more content like this about leadership and running your business in an optimal way to get the most out of your people.